By 1983, 31-year-old Christopher Reeve was already firmly established in his movie career. He also had something to celebrate in his personal life, the birth of daughter Alexandra with Gay Exton. That summer, Chris took a substantial pay cut to appear with Vanessa Redgrave and Madeline Potter in the Merchant Ivory film The Bostonians. The script was just too good for him to pass up.
What I liked about it is the character I played, Basil Ransom, is morally ambiguous. The audience shouldn't know at the end of the film whether he is a knight in shining armor who rescues a young woman from a very arid kind of life, or whether he's an absolute spoiler who is basically a chauvinist pig.
It's just your sweet nature. You always wanted to please someone, Miss Chancellor, your parents, whoever else is dear to you. But it's not really you. You're meant for something different. You're meant for privacy. You're meant for love. For me.
Producer Ismail Merchant made The Bostonians on a shoestring budget.
Sometimes, actually, they ran short of cash, and when that happened, Ismail Merchant would go in the kitchen and whip up a big curry dinner for everybody. And I remember after a while, the crew printed up T-shirts. They said, "I did it for curry."
Art imitated life when Chris was cast in another film called The Aviator. The producers were in for quite a surprise when they learned that Chris was a licensed glider pilot, capable of doing his own flying. Flying was just another example of Chris Reeve's ability to excel in any sport he took up.
Chris has always taken whatever sport it is, whether we're playing water volleyball out in Marina del Rey back in the 70s, to flying, to sailing, to skiing. He absolutely takes it to the hilt. So he's really testing himself against the elements, if you think about it.
By this time, Chris's career was also being tested. In 1986, he starred in Street Smart, playing an unscrupulous magazine writer who meets a pimp in the course of his work. The pimp was played by a then unknown Morgan Freeman. But when Street Smart opened, it did more for Freeman's career than it did for Chris's.
Street Smart was a wildly underrated performance simply because not many people saw that film. Morgan Freeman was up for an Academy Award for it.
Street Smart was financed by Cannon Films, the company that had bought the rights for Superman, on the condition that Chris do Superman 4. But when Superman 4 was released in 1987, it failed, striking a blow to his career.
He suddenly wasn't up on the A-plus list of actors. That's very tough when you've had that much worldwide fame to deal with.
At the same time, Chris's 10-year relationship with Gay Exton ended in 1987. They had never married, and the split was amicable. Chris stayed in America, and Gay returned to London with the 2 children.
Chris insisted on joint custody, which is kind of remarkable when you think that there's a whole ocean between them and 2 different cultures.
With romance the last thing from his mind, Chris returned to Williamstown in the summer of 1987. One evening, as he sat in the audience of the theater's cabaret, one of the performers caught his eye. Her name was Dana Morosini. He was captivated by her.
Not love at first sight, intense fascination and attraction at first sight.
It developed very quickly into real love.
We always thought, oh, will Chris ever settle down, that kind of thing, you say. And then he met Dana, and suddenly he was another guy. I mean, they were smitten with each other.
6 months later, they were living together. But soon after, in the fall of 1987, a plea for help put him in the middle of a dangerous situation in South America. Chile's right-wing dictator, Augusto Pinochet, had threatened some 70 dissident artists, directors, and performers with execution.
And I remember calling up going, Chris, look, I think you can save lives for real this time here.
A few days before the deadline for the execution, Chris went down to Santiago, Chile, and took part in a demonstration with the protesters.
This was an act of salvation for Chilean artists. Because if Chris had not gone down, I think some of them would have been killed.
The international attention Chris focused on the regime worked. The death warrants were lifted.
When Chris came back, he was moved in the sense like an earthquake moves you. He said they had been 2 or 3 of the most important days of his life.
Several years later, Chris translated that experience into political action at home. In 1989, he formed the Creative Coalition with Ron Silver, Susan Sarandon, and a number of others.
The idea was to educate public figures, meaning ourselves as well, that we needed to learn the issues in order to be able to communicate effectively with the media, and then to go and speak about the issues.
One of their toughest battles was waged in 1990, when Senator Jesse Helms wanted to get rid of the National Endowment for the Arts.
The arts are not a luxury. It's not something we indulge ourselves in to make ourselves feel better. It is more than that. It is practical business. It makes sense.
We managed to garner enough support and to make ourselves heard, and we're, at least partially credited with saving the NEA from going out of business.
And Chris took a big step in his personal life when he married Dana on April 11th, 1992.
We were having dinner together in our apartment, and remember, right during dinner, we just kind of both turned to each other and said, we need to get married. It's time to get married, and actually we didn't finish dinner.
Their son Will was born 2 months later. Chris's personal growth also informed his work. His supporting role in The Remains of the Day in 1993 revealed a seasoned actor able to hold his own with such consummate performers as Emma Thompson and Anthony Hopkins.
Former housekeeper, at present living in Clevedon, has indicated to me, sir, that she might be prepared to return to service.
What's this, your girlfriend? Or you mean a former attachment?
Oh, no, sir, no, sir. No, but very able housekeeper, sir. Most able housekeeper.
I was just kidding, Stephen.
Yes, sir?
Sorry.
That was one of the few films where I didn't watch with my hands over my eyes. I actually said, well, that's pretty good.
Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome now one of our key following three. Here is entry number 103, Chris Reeve.
In the 90s, Chris began to take another of his interests more seriously, competitive horseback riding. He had started riding in 1984 and had become an experienced equestrian.
It's a sport that rewards patience, perseverance, understanding, rather than a lot of the traditional kind of male sports which are based on aggression and hitting and kind of conquering.
On Memorial Day weekend, 1995, Chris headed for Culpeper, Virginia to compete in an equestrian event. It was a decision he had made at the last minute.
It was sort of a toss-up between doing that or going to an event up in Vermont or going sailing. But a couple of days before the event, a whole group from the barn where I trained had decided to go down to Culpeper together, and I was convinced to go with everybody.